Hello and welcome to Tomlin's Harmonica podcast, where I'll be talking about all things harmonica. This podcast is brought to you by the Tomlin Harmonica School, where we provide you all the resources and feedback you need to get better at blues harmonica. To find out more, go to tomlinharmonicaschool.com. Today's episode is part of a new series where I'll be discussing big topics with my good friend Liam Ward from learntheharmonica.com. Today we're chatting about Embouchure. We'll be looking at tongue blocking, lip pursing, and U-blocking. Hello and welcome to this week's podcast, where I am once again joined by my great friend Liam Ward from learntheharmonica.com. How are you doing today, Liam?
I am very well. How are you?
I'm very well as well. I'm excited about today's topic, which is, I think, going to be quite a divisive one. I certainly know that it will be for a lot of our listeners. You and I probably will end up being somewhere in agreement, I would have thought.
I don't know, I'm cruising for a bruising today.
Nice. Well, we're not in the same room, so we can't really...
It's only my computer screen that's going to take a bashing.
Oh. Well, anyway, today's topic is going to be a big one. It is embouchure, or as my video editor likes to say, aubergine. So Liam, what is embouchure?
I'm actually scared to say embouchure now, just because you say it in such a wonderful French way. You know, you're so French.
Well, I do have a slight advantage from being at school in France. So I feel that I have to really, elongate it and embouchure. So
that's it. That's all. I'm done. Un petit peu.
So you want to tell us what that word is?
Well, I in harmonica terms, I think of it as your choice of mouth shape when it comes to the instrument. So I think more broadly, it would be to do with what you're doing with your mouth, what's going on when you approach the instrument. But with harmonica, we've got certain approaches. There's two big ones, and then there's a third one, which I think of as the ugly stepbrother who's hidden in the attic. And it's a case of which of those three really you're choosing to do when you play the harmonica. Is that are we going to already fall out on that? I can see you ready to say something.
I was going to ask you about the secret fourth embouchure, but you clearly haven't been taught it yet. So
you actually the fourth one you actually have to pay to know about that one. That's that's a premium.
Nice. Okay, so our three big embouchures, I'm just going to launch straight into it, are lip pursing or puckering, tongue blocking, or U-blocking. So we'll start. I'll probably start just we'll do definitions. So lip pursing is when you make a kind of whistling shape to isolate a hole on the harmonica. So your mouth shape is going to be big enough to play a single hole. And that's how you isolate the note. Whereas tongue blocking, you're going to have a much wider mouth shape, and you're going to isolate the note that you want to play by blocking the notes you don't want to play with your tongue. Generally, you'd be playing out of the right-hand side of your mouth, but there's a lot of tongue switching happening depending on which end of the harmonica you're playing at. So we'll maybe get into that in a little bit. And then finally, U-blocking is it's something that a lot of the population won't be able to do, because apparently there's a genetic component as to whether you can even do this. But it's when you roll your tongue like that into a U shape to isolate holes on the instrument. So broad overviews. I guess, should we start with kind of broad overview of lip pursing and maybe famous players who lip purse exclusively or at least predominantly?
Yeah, so lip purse is the mouth shape of choice for most beginners. So most people intuitively lift the harmonica up to their lips. They narrow their mouth down to try and isolate a single hole. But it often comes out as, because there's too much tension, it goes really, really, really narrow. So then there's usually a process of trying to relax, trying to broaden that out ever so slightly, but not so much that you get another adjacent note creeping in. But yeah, you're just trying to take that mouth and not allow either of the holes either side to get in.
Okay, cool. And then in terms of players that I think are kind of notable lip pursers, there are loads of players who use a combination of embouchures. So I'm going to try and focus on people who are predominantly one or another. But I know that Christelle Berton pretty much exclusively lip purses. I know Will Wilde does, but he can tongue block, but Will Wilde chooses to lip purse. And we'll maybe talk a little bit about why someone might choose to lip purse. Jason Ritchie is another big choosing to lip purse, but is also a demon tongue blocker when he wants to. Is there anyone that you would like to mention?
Put me on the spot. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. I mean, you've picked three massive ones there, and I think they're great examples to start with when it comes to lip pursing, because there can be a tendency to put tongue blocking on a pedestal to say, like, if you're not tongue blocking, then you're doing something wrong. And like, listen to Christelle, listen to Will, listen to Jason, and they sound great. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll throw Howard Levy in there as well, just for.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, especially, well, all of those four that now that you've mentioned are good examples of musicians who are keen on playing often complex melodies that cut through, and not always playing straight up blues or rhythm and blues. And lip pursing can be really useful for that cutting through, that bright sound. And it doesn't always get the respect it deserves for that. If you think about tone, which we talked about in another episode, there's often that obsession with fat tone, and actually having a thinner but a brighter tone can be useful depending on what it is you're trying to do musically. And they all do amazing things with a lip purse, and I think the lip purse helps them to do that.
Definitely. We'll get into more detail about advantages and disadvantages of the different embouchures, but maybe you could chat a little bit about tongue blocking now and some kind of famous tongue blockers. Yeah,
so tongue blocking is where your mouth is wider, as you said, and then your tongue actually blocks all but one of the notes you're over. So typically you'd have a 4-hole mouth shape. So your mouth would be over 4 holes, really nice and wide, and then your tongue would come in and block usually the 3 lower holes. So you play the hole on the right hand side of your mouth. And to beginners, they think, why would I do that just to achieve that, that complicated thing just to achieve the same thing? But there are advantages we'll talk about in a bit. A lot of amplified blues harmonica players prefer to tongue block. So David Barrett is a great example of a full-on tongue blocker. Kim Wilson, but I have heard rumours about Kim Wilson, so when we go
I was
that.
about to interject there because I've heard those rumours as well.
Yeah. Well, maybe we need to get onto that. But I mean, anyone who's got a big amplified sound, you can't assume, but often you'll find that part of that is tongue blocking technique.
Okay. We're going to talk about that more later.
Okay.
I already want to disagree. And finally, U-blocking. I can't think off the top of my head of any famous U-blocking diatonic players. I know that in the chromatic world, it's something that's used a little bit more frequently. Is there anybody that comes to your mind who's a famous U blocker?
Not famous, but I know
I
people
know a
in.
guy down the
Yeah,
bench.
yeah. No, what I was going to say was I do know diatonic players who U block, and I've taught some. The ones I know who are most into U blocking are actually folk players, trad, Celtic, Irish and Scottish folk players. So I don't know whether this is true because I don't U block, but I've heard people say, and it must work for them, that the U block shape helps them do the quick trills that you really need for that style of music. That's not to say other people can't do them just as quick with another mouth shape, but I think some people it really helps, and that little flick of the tongue to get those little triplet notes.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think we'll I feel bad, but I kind of want to get U blocking out of the way before we kind of concentrate on the two important ones. And I know loads of people are going to be throwing things at the podcast device right now in anger. But U blocking, in my experience, has the advantage of making it very easy to play clean single notes, which is why a lot of beginners jump to it. But then it makes almost everything else quite a lot harder or virtually impossible to do. Do you agree?
I think there are definitely certain techniques that it's not going to help with. But I've met and I've heard players who play great with a U block, and they're happy, and I don't want to knock them. So genuinely, I have no bad feelings about the U block, but it's rare that I meet someone who uses it and uses it long term. Mm-hmm. Often, when I find out that someone is a U blocker, it's kind of they don't actually know they're a U blocker, so they think they're tongue blocking. Mm-hmm. So they've heard this term tongue block, and because they're using their tongue, they think, well, I'm tongue blocking, but they're not, because they're doing that curved U shape to isolate the hole, and that's a U block. So then they're like, what about all these extra techniques people said I can get when I'm tongue blocking? I can't do them. It's actually because they're not tongue blocking at all.
Yeah. And I really don't want to dismiss people who are accomplished as U blockers. I just think from the point of view of starting out as a beginner, it's an easier pathway to pick lip pursing or tongue blocking and go down that road, in my opinion. So let's let's talk about us, because I know we're both different as to our approaches to this. So I want to know what do you do and why?
So these days I tongue block the majority of the time. But that could be I'm tongue blocking for most of the song, and then depending on what I'm playing and what techniques I want to do, I might switch to a lip purse. So I'm pretty confident with the draw bends tongue blocked, but the blow bends I'm terrible, and I'm really bad overbending tongue blocked. So there are times when I'll switch to a lip purse, and there are times when I'll switch to a lip purse not just because of my severe limitations, but because I want a different sound. So there isn't, apart from the tone. So if you want that bright cutting through tone that lip pursing can give you, apart from searching for that, there maybe aren't that many reasons, it's contentious, for choosing to lip purse in terms of specific things that you go, oh, that's lip pursing from hearing it. But if you want to get a kind of diddly thing with your tongue going on, if your tongue is tied up on the instrument with a tongue block, you can't do that. So if you just want to do like a 4 draw with a little sort of, that sort of thing in the middle of something, if I tongue block, I can't get the diddle sort of articulation, those consonants coming through. It's just a bit just whereas a lip purse, So there might be times when I'll switch to a lip purse because I want the technique, or just for variety, etc. How about you?
So I would call myself a lip purser who is a recent convert over the last few years to adding some tongue blocking in to my playing as and when. So I think where you would maybe be a tongue blocker who throws in some lip pursing as a change, I'm a lip purser who throws in some tongue blocking as a change. Do you think that would be fair to describe you like that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I'm moving away from tongue blocking. I'm not doing less tongue blocking, but I'm trying to be less obsessed with tongue blocking. I've more and more as I play more and more, I come to the conclusion that a lot of the room for improvement for me is in phrasing and musicality in general, not to do with techniques. And that's because I hear other players who I don't think their tone is necessarily better than mine, but I think their playing is better. Their sound, their overall ability is better than mine. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? And a lot of the time it's just their phrasing is like so good. So I'm trying to be less obsessed, because I had a phase of like, tongue blocking is going to make me awesome. And now I'm like pretty good at tongue blocking, and I'm like, I'm not awesome yet. So I'm trying to change my mentality. Also, I developed this habit of, I wanted to slap everything. So like I couldn't, I even did one slap in there, but I'd be but like a whole song, like every note, I'd slap it. So I'm trying to stop myself doing that. So it's not that I'm necessarily tongue blocking less, but I'm maybe thinking these added techniques. I know we haven't really discussed them, but these added techniques that tend to come with tongue blocking, I don't need to do them all the time. Like, chill out, Liam.
Yeah, I think that's kind of I can echo that sentiment. I spent so long last year working on my tongue flutters, and I can't help but to throw in, just kind of everywhere I go. I'll walk down the street, it's like I'm gonna do some tongue flutters. But I think that was the big thing that made me want to add the tongue blocking into my repertoire, was the kind of textural element for that kind of classic blues playing. What was the USP of a harmonica? And it's the textures. And we've spoken about textures before. You did a great seminar over at Tomlin Harmonica School all about textures. And a lot of the stuff was tongue block related. And I do think that tongue blocking opens up a lot of interesting stuff from that point of view. So should we maybe chat about some of the things that tongue blocking will enable players to throw into their playing? And as a novice tongue blocker, I'm going to demonstrate some, and then I'm going to get you to demonstrate some as well, and hopefully people will be kind to me. I'm not slick like Liam when it comes to.
Oh no, pressure! I'm no David Barrett. So I should go back really, because before I was saying how there's a certain sound that when we were talking about famous tongue blockers, and I was saying there's a certain sound that is a good kind of giveaway that they're a tongue blocker. And I probably didn't say things the best way I should. So before people send me nasty emails and destroy me in the comments, I was talking about these textures, really, or that's what I meant to say. I think what I said was like if they've got a fat tone, but that isn't really what I meant. What I meant was,
I think you said that lip pursers don't sound very good ever.
I think what I said was, if you lip purse, you may as well give up now and take up the recorder. No. So there are certain textures that you will only get if your tongue is doing the work for you. So you mentioned the flutter. So it's just the tongue on and off. So very slowly, you just be. But if you speed it up, it starts to get interesting, Which, as soon as someone does that, you know that at that point, their mouth is wider than one hole. It doesn't mean they're always using that broader mouth shape, but if the sound is a single note alternating with multiple notes, they are not going to be, their mouth is not going to be one hole wide, they must be using it further than that. So you've been working on your flutters, have you?
Oh yeah, I got.
It's sounding great, man.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Okay, so maybe before flutters, we should have chatted a little bit more about tongue slaps, which you did mention them, but I would say that the tongue slap is probably the gateway drug to tongue fluttering. So a tongue slap would be where you start with your tongue off the harmonica and slap it to get the single isolated note, and it gives you something like. That kind of sound, and I think that's a really cool classic blues sound. My issue with this is that, given context, sometimes that's too much. Sometimes you're taking up too much space when you're playing with a big band. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it all depends on context. If you're performing a solo piece, it's Christmas time and everyone's, play a song sort of thing in front of the family, it can be really cool to do quite a lot of slapping, because essentially you're being your own rhythm section. It's a very basic way of doing it, but you're kind of, I would call it vamping. You're kind of backing yourself up. So instead of... which is fine, but if you're playing on your own, you're very exposed and there isn't that much going on. Whereas if you choose to... suddenly you're kind of filling it out, and that's a lot of slapping, but you're doing it on your own. It's kind of a performance piece, and in the traditional styles of European folk music in the 1800s, and then over to America in the late 18 and early 1900s, there was a lot of that going on because they were playing solo a lot of the time.
Yeah, excellent. So another tongue block technique, which I think is probably the most used by lip pursers, is tongue splits. This is probably the first thing that a lip purser will learn to do tongue blocks, and this is certainly what I teach students, because I teach lip pursing from the off. I don't know how you approach it. Do you teach beginners tongue blocking or lip pursing?
I teach. So I have a complete beginner course, which is all lip pursed, and it mentions tongue blocking and U blocking, just in case that's what people are kind of more going towards. But I assume lip pursing. With private students, I teach to what people want or feel comfortable with. Fair.
So anyway, the first tongue block technique would be the tongue split, which sounds something like this. And literally all that's going on there is I am playing two holes that are not adjacent to each other while blocking the holes in between them. So I was playing the 1 draw and the 4 draw without playing holes 2 and 3. So I was blocking with the tip of my tongue. And that's a great way to kind of thicken out the sound and kind of almost get that kind of Hammond organ sort of swell going.
Yeah, that's a great one, and this is the one technique that almost every lip purser will do. So lip pursers will generally throw in octave splits at least, so that they're getting that fattened sound. So an octave split is just a specific version of a tongue split where the two notes are in octave parts, and that's so common in blues, but in other genres, that even if you're a lip person, you'll tend to throw that in, or you'll learn that technique at some point, even if you do no more tongue blocking or tongue blocking related techniques into your playing. The famous one that people always talk about is Duke. So it would be so much thinner without an octave there. But it shows up everywhere, especially the 3/6 blow. The 1/4 draw is great, and the 2/5 draw, which is technically a flattened seventh interval, dirty interval, you hear a lot. You hear those a lot, even with lip pursers.
Absolutely, and I think it's quite a nice way to fatten up the higher end of the harmonica. I certainly know that I saw you doing this years ago, and I was like, right, I got to steal this. I'm still nowhere near as confident with it as you are, but the kind of that kind of big, wide at the upper end of the harmonica. I need to do some more work on that. It's been a while.
That's a great thing. One of the problems with that top end is that thin sound that it tends to have, as you say. And so one of the workarounds, is to involve more octave splits. So on the blow notes, a 4-hole width, so blocking 2 notes in the middle, the whole way up will get you octave splits. But on the draw notes, it depends where you are. So it's only really the bottom 1 and 4 draw, and then you've got that dirty split. And then further up, you've actually got a 5-hole width, so you're blocking 3 holes in the middle, which means if you're practicing moving between, say you're going up like the major scale or something, hole 4/7 octave, and then you're switching to the draw, blow, draw, you kind of in and out on the harmonica because you're having to really shove it in even further than usual to get those higher octave splits. So you kind of, it looks ridiculous, but they're useful. Just kind of making it bigger than it would be.
Yeah, it's back to that organ sound that's so cool. You're gonna have to.
And I was kind of combining a slap and a octave there, or more like a glissando and a slap. So I'm sliding up, I'm applying the octave with a slapping motion. So there's kind of 3 things going on. And just before I forget, you were saying these tongue splits, you don't always have to make an octave split. So one example is a 2 and 5 draw, which gives you that dirty thing. But I was watching, was it Ed Hopwood's video on YouTube recently, the Harmonica Barge, and he plays a lot of Cajun and Zydeco. And he was playing, I think it was one of his own tunes, but he played like something with a really nice interval. So that, I don't even know what interval that is. So that is 4 draw and 7 draw. It's actually easy to do because it's the same as the blow octave, you're just drawing, but it's not an octave on the draw. So anyway, it gives a different texture and it kind of sounds, it's like got that accordion-esque thing, so it kind of works for Cajun Zydeco stuff. And I was like, I need to do more of that. Joe Falisco does a lot of it as well because he's awesome at all those different intervals. Again, unamplified and unaccompanied playing. He's awesome at that. So check out Joe Falisco for more weird interval stuff.
Yeah, I would second that, Joe Falisco. So I think that was a major 6th
Okay,
I
if you
was,
say
I was
so.
doing some maths in my brain. That's why you could see me drifting off into the distance.
I just thought I'd lost you. You were like, I'm gone.
So let's kind of address, why people don't have to tongue block, and kind of think about, because you said that you don't think that there are any reasons not to tongue block, and I would disagree. Just from a point of view of ease, I think you can do everything tongue blocked. That's not in question. And there is always going to be a player that you come across who can do a lot of different techniques tongue blocked. I remember getting a student years ago who came in and said, "Oh, I tongue block overblows," and I hadn't come across anyone tongue blocking overblows. I was like, "Cool." There's not really a lot you can say to that. It's something that is a lot easier to do lip pursed. So, then it comes down to, is there a reason for you to learn to do it tongue blocked? Yes, there might be if you're using overblows a lot in your playing, but if it's something that you're doing once in a while, then maybe just sticking to lip pursed makes more sense. You mentioned Kim Wilson. So this is a good one. I can't remember who I was talking to. I think it was Jason Ritchie. I should have like a name drop thing there. This little harmonica player, you might have heard from him.
My mate Jay.
But yeah, we're talking about Kim Wilson and David Barrett, and David Barrett, apparently went through this whole kind of process of transitioning from an entirely lip pursing player to an entirely tongue blocking player. And he clearly worked exceedingly hard to basically be able to do absolutely everything that he wanted to do on the instrument tongue blocked. And then I think he was interviewing Kim Wilson for his website, and he just assumed that Kim Wilson tongue blocked everything, as everyone did. And then he said, "No, there are times when I'll lip purse." And I'm assuming it comes down to things like articulation and blow bends, because that's generally where people will switch back to lip pursing. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm remembering it from the same source, but I feel like someone told me. It's probably you. No. I feel like it was mentioned in a video somewhere on YouTube that yeah, Kim was like, "Oh no, I don't blow bend tongue block. Can you do that?" Almost. And everyone was like holding him as this tongue block god, and like he sounds awesome tongue block, but then he's like, "Oh no, I don't do that tongue block," or sometimes I switch when I need it. And I think that's the takeaway, maybe more than anything else, is it's horses for courses, and it's also taste, and there's no accounting for taste. If you like the sound you get lip pursed, don't tongue block, unless there's a specific thing you want to learn with, a specific sound that you really want out of a tongue block. There's no point sweating over that. At the end of the day, we all want to enjoy the instrument, right?
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's kind of the most important thing to come towards the concluding segment of this episode, is that I think generally when people go on their harmonica journey, and I'm generalizing massively, but generally they'll start lip pursing, they'll discover tongue blocking, and they'll kind of hear from somebody that unless you're a tongue blocker, you're not a serious harmonica player, and they'll just take that as gospel. And leave it there without kind of exploring further. And then when you actually start talking to really, really good players that you can't really mess with and fault, you start realizing that everyone has their own take on what they like to lip purse and what they like to tongue block. There are players who are more comfortable pursing all of their bends on holes 1 to 3, and then switching to tongue blocking from hole 4 up. There are players who don't tongue block at all, but are absolutely amazing players. I mean, Rolly Platt is not a tongue blocker, but in terms of amazing textures on the instrument, in terms of technique, he's right up there. He's a brilliant player. Todd Parrott's another great example. Fantastic player, very bluesy. He does also go into that kind of area of technical wizardry, which maybe is more of a lip purser's domain in terms of kind of more musically complex playing. Not necessarily more technically complex playing, but more musically complex. So more harmonic interests, more weird note choices. So kind of filling in the blanks that you wouldn't necessarily do in a blues context.
I think if I had to use a kind of rule of thumb, if someone's like, what mouth shape shall I use? I think tongue blocking has its biggest influence in the middle of the harmonica when you're adding textures with it. So if you hear someone play and they're doing a kind of that, then and you like that, and you're like, I want to sound like that, then I think maybe look at tongue blocking. But if you hear someone kind of doing a sort of you don't need to tongue block for that, and actually maybe lip pursing you'll find it easier, and maybe the sound will cut through more. And if you're looking at the lower holes on the harp, you can get a huge fat sound with a lip purse. So you might not even be able to tell people apart. So you could hear someone and I'm back and forth throughout all of that. So I played all those notes one way and then the other and then back. And you don't necessarily know without looking or really, really, really listening at which point I'm lip pursing, which point I'm tongue blocking, because you can do similar techniques with the lip purse.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've been a lot more succinct than I was. In well done.
I have my moments.
You really
23 hours, 55 minutes a day. I make no sense, and then I have my 5 minutes of cogency.
Very cool. So I guess quick tips for people looking to incorporate tongue blocking into their playing. I'd like to start on this one because this is still quite fresh in my mind. Starting in that middle octave, like you suggested, starting around the 4-hole, and just thinking about just playing clean notes. Don't worry about the textures that you can get tongue blocking. Get your clean notes down, because that's going to be quite a difficulty at the beginning, and just working through playing just a major scale, starting on 4 blow. Work through that, get comfortable with that before you start adding in anything exciting, like tongue slaps. And before you even start adding in tongue slaps, get comfortable transitioning between your lip pursed notes and your tongue block notes. So I'd say if someone wants to add a bit of tongue blocking into their playing, it's completely rational to stick to lip pursing on holes 1, 2, and 3 and switch to tongue blocking on hole 4 and up. So practice switching when you get to hole 4. I don't see if people can see on the camera. You can see I'm going deeper on that 4 hole. Get that area smoothed out, and then you can start adding in. And there, I'm switching a lot between lip pursing and tongue blocking, but I'm generally sticking to the rule of lip pursed 1, 2, 3, tongue blocked above. Apart from one area, which we didn't talk about, but I want to really quickly mention. This is something that I feel is the big advantage of tongue blocking that never gets talked about, which is the ability to jump holes quickly and do... Yeah. So there I'm doing 1 draw, 4 draw by switching which side of my mouth I'm playing on. And that's just brilliant over the 5 chord, 4 chord. And I do that all the time. What about you, Liam? What are your quick tips for integrating some tongue blocking?
Yeah, I think you've touched on some really great stuff there. And after getting that major scale, I would say work on simple songs you can already play. And it doesn't matter if they're nursery rhymes, even if your aim is to play blues. If you know a few simple melodies, you want to transfer those over to a tongue block. And the reason is you don't want to be wasting your energy on kind of worrying about learning a new song when the important thing to focus on is that technique. And you also know what it sounds like when you play it right, because you can already play it lip pursed. So as you said, not worrying about the slapping and the flutters and that to begin with, because you need to get the foundations of just the tongue block mouth shape right. So essentially trying to make them indistinguishable from if you were lip pursing those. And although at first it feels like going backwards, you're going backwards to go forwards. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do that, push through that, and only then work on those added techniques, because they're not going to be right if the foundation isn't right. But that tongue switching thing you said, yeah, that's really true. I tend to, if I'm tongue blocking, I will often play the 1 draw with my tongue on the right hand side. Anyway, it's just like a habit. Even if I'm not switching, I'll just like I've just switched across for that. I quite like the feel of it. I prefer it to being like stuck on the end of the harmonica, or like reverting to a lip purse for 1 hole, which feels a bit silly for me.
Oh, definitely. I totally agree. Well, Liam, this has been an absolute pleasure once again. And thank you so much for spending some time with me. And I highly recommend that people check out Liam's YouTube channel at Learn the Harmonica, and his website, learntheharmonica.com, where you can sign up for his member zone and get some great harmonica lessons. And yeah, check that out in the show notes.
Thanks a lot. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of my Harmonica podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your podcast service of choice. And if you're ready to take your harmonica playing to the next level, then you should check out my online harmonica school over at tomlinharmonicaschool.com. Happy harping!